Another week, another Hytale blog post, but today is exciting because we're finally shifting our focus away from Zone 1. My name is Codiak, and in today's video, we'll take a tour of Zone 3 on Orbis and break down all the major details, including new prefabs, new creatures, and new factions. If you happen to catch Moo and Chris at EGX Res, you've probably already seen some of the footage from this week's blog post. The team showcased elements of Zone 3 during their presentation and gave us our first taste of what players can expect when they're adventuring across the various biomes. If we look back at some of the World Zone concept art and focus in on Zone 3, we can start to identify some of the defining features like forested valleys, tall mountains, and deep caves. Looking more closely at the ratios in the concept art, we can see that the snow-covered regions far exceed that of the forested region. The team goes on to explain that each zone has an affinity for a particular aspect of elemental magic, and in Zone 3's case, that means water in all forms, from winding rivers to snow-capped peaks and glaciers. This is probably one of the most interesting pieces of information revealed in the blog post and immediately sparked a conversation on our Discord. Dragum, a friend of the Gurus, put a few pieces of information together to come to the conclusion that Zone 1 generally fits with the Earth theme. Zone 2 fits the Wind theme based off of imagery of the Pharans we've already seen, and of course, as we said before, Zone 3's affinity is water. And although I'm not a gambling man, I think it's pretty safe to assume Zone 4 is tied to fire. During my research for this video, I was speaking with Ollie Pulse, who some of you may know from the Hytale Info subreddit, and he actually brought up a post he made a while back about this very topic. The Hytale team is smart. They don't make mistakes when it comes to releasing information, but that's all part of the fun. Hypixel states in this post that Zone 3 has already been identified by name, and if we do a little digging, we find the word Borea cleverly used during the World Gen blog post. Again, thanks to Ollie for pointing that out. Now, these are all working titles, but at this point, based on blog posts and concept art, we've been able to identify the names and affinities for the 4 revealed zones, as well as piece together information about the ones still under wraps. If we take a look at the iconography concept art, you'll notice that lightning and void are the 2 remaining elements. Now, lightning is also tied in with Gaia, which we've seen a few times in the concept art. However, void is not included in any of the images of the deity, which leads me to believe that corruption is part of the larger Hytale story. If we reference back to the World Gen concept art, it's clear that Zone 5 is heavily influenced by lightning, while Zone 6 is bathed in a purple glow, often associated with corruption or the void. Now, you know I don't like to deal in speculation, so let me point out a few things here. We've already seen a number of images confirming that Orbis is being corrupted in one way or another. The first image I want to talk about comes from this very blog post, and of course I'm talking about the Outlanders concept art. We can see elements of corruption mentioned multiple times. In the top left, we see a village before the corruption takes hold, but in the remaining images, we see a faction that succumbs and eventually embraces this corruption. Now, the Hypixel team does confirm in the blog post that this is a breakaway human faction, but we don't know much more than that. But I'd wager all the money in my pockets that these guys are probably not as friendly as the Quebecs. In terms of factions, I'm noticing a trend with each of the zones. In Zone 1, we have the Quebecs and the Trorks, 2 opposing factions, one relatively friendly and one hostile. In Zone 2, we have the same thing with the Pharans and the Skerriks. And now we can't assume anything, but I've never met a bug faction I liked, so I'm going to go out on a limb and say the Skerriks probably aren't that friendly. Moving to Zone 3, we have the Outlanders, but who else? The Hypixel team even alludes to this in the blog post, saying, Outlander camps are imposing and bristle with defensive features like high walls and watchtowers, but who are they attempting to keep at bay? If you look more closely at the imagery, you'll notice that some of the Outlander settlements are free from the corruption we saw in the concept art. So maybe the Outlanders are fighting themselves, trying to fend off their corrupted brethren. Now that's just an idea, so don't kill me in the comments, but it would make sense based off of the pieces of information we've already been able to put together. Of course, there are other factions as well, like the Fauns and Slothian, both of which appear on the Gaia's Elements concept art, but their origins and place on Orbis are still a mystery. As usual with Hytale content, we're left having more questions than answers. Let's leave the corruption behind for a minute to talk about some of the other features we saw during our tour of Zone 3, including new prefabs and creatures. You'll all remember this incredible shot from the trailer. Well, rams have found their home in Zone 3. The team even connects the 2 scenes, which leads me to believe that a tameable mount system isn't entirely out of the question. In fact, the whole idea of moving around Hytale is one of the topics of our most recent survey, which is still open, so if you want to share your thoughts about mounts or fast travel or anything else, be sure to check out that link in the description below. Besides rams, we were also introduced to the woodpecker, a bird variant. In last week's blog post, we talked about NPC behavior and the team's modular approach to design, which allows them to create templates for the NPCs they create. This means that woodpeckers, sparrows, and pigeons most likely come from the same basic template, but are customized to give them their own unique qualities. With that knowledge, who knows how many creatures we'll eventually see in the game, but the possibilities are endless, which I know has a lot of us really excited. Finally, hostile environments call for hostile creatures, and we got official word that polar bears and wolves will dot the landscape across Zone 3. Now, as many of you already know, prefabs are pre-designed elements that are placed in Orbis based on the world-gen technology. Because Zone 3 has a vast network of underground caves, it's only fitting that mining play a big part in the landscape. For the most part, Zone 3 makes use of cool earth tones, blues, browns, greens, and grays. Now, to create that more dreary effect, the team desaturates those colors, producing significantly less vibrant blocks. With the addition of the bioluminescent mushrooms, the team is able to create those flashes of light that help create a stark contrast, which gives the zone its flavor. It's a really smart direction that will no doubt be palpable to players once they're in-game, and will only be more pronounced once we have music to accompany the experience. The zone leaves me with a sense of foreboding and dread, and clearly the Hypixel team is doing that by design. The team even says Zone 3 played host to some of the darkest moments in Orbis history, which leads me to believe there are plenty of secrets hidden in and around the zone. While there is clearly a sense of cold isolation conveyed through the images, there's also hope. The team makes a point of showing us Zone 3's beautiful sunrises, which leads me to think that maybe things are starting to turn around. Nevertheless, Zone 3 is a perfect example of how subtle details go a long way. For all of you Game of Thrones fans out there, I get a very north of the wall type vibe from this zone. It's cold, isolated, and hostile, and played host to historic events, but through all of that, life still struggles to cling on. I don't know about you, but Zone 3 shows an evolution in Hypixel's design. While Zones 1 and 2 are impressive, Zone 3 truly leaves me in awe. It's becoming increasingly clear that there is a larger story to tell on Orbis, and Zone 3 seems to be at the center of that origin story. Now, I've done a lot of puzzle piecing in this video, and I hope you can forgive me for some of my tangents, but as we get more information about each zone and each creature, I'm going to do my best to put those pieces together for you. As always, I'm curious to hear what you think. There is a cloud of mystery hanging over Zone 3, and I want your help to break down what we know so far. If I missed something or you made a connection that you think we need to know about, be sure to leave a comment in the section below. And remember, you can always join the Game Gurus on Discord if you want to keep the conversation going after the video is over. My name is Codiak, and from everyone here at the Game Gurus, thanks for watching, and play on.